The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2022, over 100,000 Americans lost their lives due to drug overdoses, with nearly 70% of those fatal overdoses being due to synthetic opioids like fentanyl. The fentanyl trafficked across our southern border has turned every town into a border town. In South Carolina in 2022, we lost 2,296 lives due to drug overdoses, with 1,660 of those due to fentanyl. With deadly fentanyl taking the lives of so many Americans, I was distressed when reviewing the State Foreign Operations Appropriations Bill to find we were spending more to subsidize migrants and refugees from other countries than we were spending on combating international narcotics trafficking. My amendment would simply transfer $500 million from the Migration and Refugee Assistance account to the International Narcotics Control and Law Enforcement account. This would provide law enforcement with much-needed resources to combat the deadly scourge of fentanyl trafficking. Fentanyl is a nationwide problem that requires a truly international approach. The primary source of fentanyl killing American citizens is from China. This fentanyl is brought by international drug cartels, trafficked into the United States through the southern border, and distributed into each and every one of our communities. This is a chemical attack on our nation to weaken our society and kill our young people. It is critical that we bolster funding to combat international narcotics trafficking. Further, this additional funding is necessary to combat Mexican drug cartels, who are seeing soaring profits under the Biden administration. According to a House Budget Committee report, the cartels are bringing in $30 million a day, or nearly $1 billion every month or more, from their human and drug trafficking operations. The amount of human suffering taking place at the hands of these criminal cartels is heartbreaking. Criminal cartels who control our border force migrants, including women and children, into indentured servitude, sex slavery, drug trafficking, and worse, to pay their way into the United States. On the path to the border, there are rape trees where cartel members will hang the underwear of women and girls they've raped and abused on their journey to America. Studies estimate approximately 60% of unaccompanied minors are exploited through child pornography, sex abuse, and drug trafficking by the cartels on their journey to the United States. This cruel reality is enabled by the federal funds that go to entities that fuel cash payments to migrants. Not only are Biden's open border policies enabling this human suffering, taxpayers are funding it. It is critical that we put people over politics, citizens over cartels, and pass this amendment to bolster law enforcement and counter narcotics operations to put an end to the cartel's cruelty. And I urge the passage of this amendment. I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. What purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I claim time in opposition to this amendment.
Gentlewoman from California claims time in opposition. The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I rise in strong opposition to this amendment. The Migration and Refugee Assistance account supports protection and assistance to ease the suffering of those that had to leave everything behind to become a refugee. Again, it's hard to describe the meanness in these amendments. The funding also contributes to broader USG and international efforts to resolve conflicts that cause displacement and provide solutions for people and families that cannot return home. This humanitarian aid, it saves lives and upholds the dignity of tens of millions of forcibly displaced and crisis-affected people, including refugees, victims of conflict, stateless persons, and vulnerable migrants. 1 in every 69 people, or 1.5% of the entire world's population, is now forcibly displaced. This is nearly double the 1 in 125 people who were displaced a decade ago. What does it mean for the United States to turn its back on these people? Almost 11 million Sudanese remained uprooted. Now, I visited Sudan this spring, and these people have been uprooted by violence over and over and over and over. Almost 14 million people have fled a brutal regime in Syria and exist only tenuously in neighboring countries like Lebanon, Turkey, Jordan, and Egypt. By cutting this assistance, nations hosting these refugees will not accept growing refugee populations in their countries, potentially destabilizing regions and threatening global stability and security. Should we be spending more in other areas of this bill? Absolutely, which is why the 12% proposed cut is irresponsible and does not come anywhere near meeting the needs of the United States. The migration and refugee account is already facing a $725 million cut. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentlewoman from South Carolina is recognized.
Protecting America and her citizens is it mean? It simply means that we are putting our nation and her people first, as we should, because we've sworn an oath to our Constitution. Putting our citizens and our nation's sovereignty, that above any other, is what we should be doing right now to combat what Joe Biden and his administration have done to the United States of America. We are literally using taxpayer dollars, paying people to come here illegally, who are then infiltrating into our communities, who are raping women, who are killing children. We read story after story on the news of violence happening in our communities. Fentanyl drug overdoses. In fact, 10 years ago, I didn't even know what fentanyl was, but in fact, last year, I knew 2 people personally who died of a fentanyl overdose. Joe Biden and his administration is allowing this to happen right in every one of our communities today, and we have to put an end to it. That means moving money around, cutting funding to the programs that are allowing this to happen, and stop funding what's coming across our southern border. If we really, truly care about America, then put your money where your mouth is and protect her citizens. And when we talk about threatening security, the videos this week of Southern California where Gavin Newsom said he was going to send the guard down to the border because, by golly, he was going to protect the state of California. The next day, a video of hundreds and hundreds of Chinese nationals coming into Southern California illegally. It's just absurd completely, and this body needs to do something about it, and I reserve. Thank you.
The gentlewoman reserves. Gentlewoman